Mikey Musumeci versus the internet and himself. We're going to recap with two recent events regarding Mikey Musumeci. First, we'll start with the human backpack Aljamain Sterling and his complaints about jiu-jitsu competition and butt scooting. Then we'll talk about Sneako. Obviously, if you clicked this video based on the title, you already know who Mikey Musumeci is. If you don't know who he is, I will include a quick highlight reel. He is basically known as a limb collector, and he is a jiu-jitsu practitioner, probably one of the best in the world. However, when it comes to cultural topics, I think Mikey is out of the loop. I'll go over that in detail with these two topics that we're going to cover right now. All right, so let's start with Aljamain Sterling's complaints about his recent loss in a jiu-jitsu competition, and then we will go to Mikey's response.
What are your thoughts on the matchup?
I didn't even know how they scored that. Another man can't drag his ass cheeks on the mat and think that's a win, doing absolutely nothing. Yeah, it's sport jiu-jitsu, guys, but I guarantee you, if that was a street fight, my man would never do that shit. You know what I mean? So why are we turning the sport into some type of weird spectacle where you can win a match off of your back, doing absolutely nothing? If I did nothing, what the fuck did he do? Pull guard from standing up. Don't just start the match on your butt. That should be deducted a point right out of the gate. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Never let another man drag you by your ankles in front of your loved ones and friends, because that is a disgrace.
On that point, before I get to Mikey Musumeci, I think that Aljamain is finally, because he's done this before in MMA himself. We'll go through a couple clips of him actually doing that. But this is also a problem I had recently with the Pantoja versus Royval fight, where Pantoja basically just held on to Royval and won based off of control time. But it's like you were just holding him and you weren't doing anything. So it's a thing that a lot of people, if you want combat sports to grow bigger as a sport and get, bigger than, not bigger than, but if you want it to be on the same tier as NFL or NHL or all these other sports that have bigger audiences, because the American public is, it's been around for decades, maybe a century. Are we hitting a century at this point? But yeah, so if we want combat sports to hit that same level of notoriety, we're going to have to change something about the way we approach fights so that the audience can actually be wanting to spectate. Don't get me wrong, MMA has grown exponentially, especially thanks to the UFC. But what I'm saying is that it could be even bigger if we don't get comfortable with where it's at now, especially with using rules where you could just wait in guard or just pull guard and just wait there. So all right, let's get to Mikey's response to this.
I'm so sick of hearing people complain about pulling guard and butt scooting in jiu-jitsu. The first thing I'm going to say is, this is sport jiu-jitsu. There's no striking in sport jiu-jitsu. Obviously, in a real fight on the street, on concrete, you're not going to pull guard, right? But in sport jiu-jitsu, the goal is to be able to submit the person as fast as you can, right? Then that leads me to the next point, wrestling in jiu-jitsu. You'll constantly see two guys wrestling in jiu-jitsu. And honestly, let's be honest, wrestling jiu-jitsu, the jiu-jitsu people suck at wrestling. Any D1 wrestler will destroy most jiu-jitsu people in wrestling, right? We're horrible at it. So then you'll see two guys, both are horrified to get guillotined, so nobody's shooting, and then they just hand fight the whole time, right? So what are you doing there? You're not even trying to do submissions, you're doing nothing, you're just hand fighting and just wasting time. Who wants to see that? Guard pullers trying to get to submissions, which is the goal of sport jiu-jitsu. Submit the person as fast as you can, right? But then let me ask you another question. You don't want us to pull guard, you don't want us to butt scoot, fine, take us down. Where do we end up? We end up on bottom just as if we pulled guard. So now, I'm confused. Explain to me the difference between somebody taking me down and I end up on bottom or me pulling guard. One is more efficient than the other, right? One wastes less time for me to submit the person as fast as I can.
Okay, so on that point where he's talking about what's the difference between him pulling guard and being taken down, well, he's still not thinking of this as far as a spectator perspective, because the spectators are there to see, it's a combat sport. Combat means action. People want to see action. So if you just sit down, people are just like, why did he sit down? Why is he just sitting down Indian style on the ground now? Whereas people, if they see someone take someone down, it's like someone had to put in work to get you onto the ground. That's why when people are just like, why did he just sit down? It's like, okay, yeah, that's why the audience or the spectators who don't compete, who don't even train, are confused. They're like, why did he just sit down? So that's the difference. Even if the audience doesn't understand technically how to wrestle or how to grapple any kind of jiu-jitsu whatsoever, the audience will still understand when someone is taken down that the other person had to make that happen. Your opponent had to take you down. So when your opponent takes you down and the audience sees that, they're like, okay, wow, that seems like something that should be rewarded. Some type of effort was put to put you in that position. And yes, you can still win when you're on the ground. Once the person takes you down, and then the audience can then see that, okay, that guy was taken down. But once he got taken down, he still got to a position where he made the person who took him down tap. Like, if you get an arm bar or a triangle or something like that, the audience will then they will recognize, oh wow, okay, just because he got taken down doesn't mean that he was going to lose. He got taken down and still won. But in order for us to have an audience to get behind the sport of jiu-jitsu or just any grappling sport at all, they're going to want to, from an ignorant perspective, a naive perspective, a perspective of, I don't do this sport at all. How can I get behind it as a spectator? That's how you get them behind. You want both athletes to compete in a way that the audience can then be like, okay, wow, I can see a lot of even though I don't understand technically, I can understand why people are excited by watching this when there is action. All right, here's a moment where Mikey submits his opponent using his opponent's own jiu-jitsu move.
Position I hit is called an Aoki lock. It's a modified heel hook, but I learned this position from Shinya Aoki. It's his submission that he invented. What I think of a master of jiu-jitsu is somebody that inspires another generation, and then they're doing the positions that you created. Shinya deserves so much credit. I did his move on him. So that's like a master to student. He's an idol of mine for being 40 years old and still competing and challenging himself. That's a champion.
So this is what I'm saying. Mikey, he's very good at the sport, but he is very dorky. He makes it unfun. This other guy underneath says, the gayest sport ever. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, jiu-jitsu doesn't get no kind of respect because a lot of the times it is very boring to watch. So we're not going to get a lot of people, we're not going to get more spectators behind this if you have Mikey Musumeci as the spokesperson for it. All right, let's take a look at Aljamain Sterling and what I was talking about when he does this also. All right, so right here on Aljamain Sterling's fight with Piotr Jan, at this moment, Aljamain Sterling had slipped. And as he was recovering, Piotr Jan then started basically sprawling onto him. And you'll see here Aljamain Sterling rolls to his back, which, is not a bad move. You can get to your, you can recover from getting to your back. But you'll see here that Aljamain Sterling, once Piotr Jan starts to back up a little, he just stays on his back. Aljamain stays on his back. So Piotr Jan is being active, but Aljamain Sterling, you see right here, it's at this moment he becomes a butt scooter. You see what I'm saying? And he's even putting his hand behind his head. Like he's just chilling there. He's got both hands behind his head now, just waiting for Piotr Jan to do something. So now he is essentially becoming the butt scooter that he was complaining about when he was competing. It happens also again later in the video. All right, so at this moment, you see Piotr Jan starts to actively move in on Aljamain again with the engagement where Piotr Jan takes down Aljamain Sterling. After this exchange, Piotr Jan hits Aljamain with the knee. He then gets the shoulder grip and sweeps him, or trips him. It's kind of like a trip and a sweep, but he puts Aljamain on his back. And Piotr Jan, you can see here, is still being pretty active on the ground. And Aljamain, again, is going to get comfortable just laying on his back. You see Piotr Jan starts to disengage to let Aljamain get up. Look, this is very disengaging stance here from Piotr Jan. He wants Aljamain to stand up. And Aljamain is just there on his back, just waiting. This is what I mean when I say that Aljamain, after competing in that grappling match, you see here, even the ref is like, okay, get up. This is what I mean, is that Aljamain Sterling was complaining about something that he himself did. So I hope that in losing that match, it changes his perspective on competing in general. Now let's take a look at one more moment. Aljamain shoots in, Jan sprawls, and then Aljamain places his hand on the floor, on the mat. This is why Aljamain Sterling won the fight. Technically, he won the fight, even though he didn't really win the fight. He's got his hands on the mat, he's got his knee on the mat. As you know, in UFC, if your hands and knees are on the mat, you can't throw a knee at a grounded opponent. You're considered to be grounded. So here, Piotr Jan is getting ready to then, boom, throws the knee. But because Aljamain Sterling was technically a grounded opponent because his knee was on the ground. This is what caused Petr Yan to lose the fight. So it's another thing where Aljamain Sterling was saying, like, in a real fight, you know, you couldn't just do this whatever butt skidding. Like, it's the same situation here, but in a real fight, you can't just have a knee on the ground and expect your opponent who's standing to not throw a knee at you. I actually also want to take a look at another moment in Aljamain Sterling's fight with Henry Cejudo. All right, here in this fight with Henry Cejudo, this is another problem I had with Aljamain Sterling, is that you'll see Henry Cejudo, when he gets him down on the ground, Aljamain Sterling does something in particular similar to his Petr Yan fight. So Henry Cejudo here is preparing a flying knee. He disguised it in a shot, and he actually caught Aljo with that knee. And then bam, he rocks him with the hand. He then gets Aljamain to the ground. He's sprawled on him. You see Aljamain here then puts his hands on the mat. So Henry Cejudo cannot, you know, if he wants to, he couldn't throw a knee because then he would be hitting a grounded opponent again. And you're going to see that when Henry Cejudo then gets up, that's good pressure on the neck right there, by the way. You see Henry Cejudo, dude, his back just looks like all muscle. But at a certain point, he's going to disengage. He starts to get up. All right. And as Henry Cejudo starts to get up, you're going to see Aljamain, he places both his hands on the mat. You see how he's placed both his hands on the mat right there? So even if Henry Cejudo started, I'm going to pause this right here. Actually, okay, so look, Henry Cejudo is standing there. I think he was aware that Aljamain would try to do some cheater moves like this where he keeps his hands on the mat, he keeps his knees on the mat. So if he gets struck in the head again by like a kick or another knee, he could win again by disqualification of Henry Cejudo. And that's what I mean when it was funny to see Aljamain Sterling complain about his opponent basically not simulating a real fight in a combat sport where you're supposed to simulate a real fight. And he has a history of doing that himself. Now let's get to the Sneako situation, which is a weird cross of internet communities. Sneako, if you don't know, he's like a streamer on Kick, I believe now, but he got pretty big, pretty prominent through being a guest on different red pill type podcasting appearances. And it's kind of weird because Mikey Musumeci calls him out as a bully, where I don't really think of Sneako as a bully. He may be annoying and brash, but he's not really picking on specific people. I mean, but then again, I don't really watch too much of Sneako's stuff. The stuff that I do see people post clips of him on, it's either good or bad. It's usually him making a solid point about, you know, something, whatever, red pill related. There's no middle ground. Sneako usually either has a good take on something that someone will post, or someone will post a clip of him saying something completely stupid or doing something completely stupid. So Sneako, I don't really see him as a bully. Usually when I see people posting clips of him online, it's usually him being an agitator. He's invited onto podcasts to argue or to debate with people. And so obviously when you get into an argument or a debate, people are going to be more animated than the average person. Definitely see the people that he hangs around with, that Neon Kid and Jack Jordy, or whatever his last name is. Those kids are bullies. Those kids are definitely people who should have their arms and legs broken or something. Someone should really put the smack down on those two kids. But, well, they're not kids. They look young, but they're not kids. Anyways, those are actual bullies. Sneako is just an argumentative person. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Mikey Musumeci's, how his beef starts with Sneako. Actually, I'm not sure where it starts exactly. I think Sneako probably said something about him, and so this is Mikey's response to, I can't find whatever the source is, what started this problem, but here's Mikey's first initial fire back.
So today I'm going to talk about bullies. Bullies are weak people that make fun of others around them, that give themselves relevance, and that make themselves feel good. They pick on the differences of humans, which is the most beautiful part of humans, their uniqueness. I really don't like bullies, guys. And there's this guy named Sneako making fun of me, making fun of my friend, making fun of jiu-jitsu. He calls himself a boxer. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. Let's have an MMA fight. I challenge Sneako to an MMA fight. I'm going to shut his mouth, and I'm going to take the bully's lunch money.
Even this like smile right here is such a snarky smile. Like he doesn't even seem really like he's ever had a bully problem. He looks like he's ready to be the bully. Elijah Schaefer here says, a trained fighter wanting to fight an amateur professionally because of mean words is some gay ass nerd shit. There's lots of gay ass nerds in the comments too. But yeah, he's right though, because Sneako, like I said, he's just a guy who people invite on their podcast to argue about whatever it is they argue about. That's what he does. He's not an athlete. He's apparently he trains some boxing, but he's so new to it. I don't even think he's a year into it. Here's Sneako's response.
The most beautiful part of humans. They pick up the different. Bro, picking on something doesn't mean you can't see the beauty in differences. Making fun of it is actually an appreciation for it.
That's kind of a weird take. I would not agree with that specific part of this response.
See, what I see when I watch this video, and I do find it very funny, I'm not gonna lie. What I see when I see this video is a kid who was bullied and then he got really good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he's still that kid that was bullied and he's seeing flashbacks of when I'm making fun of him, making fun of his voice, he's probably seeing flashbacks from what happened in school. That's what I see. And I didn't think that he was gonna have that reaction. I thought he was gonna laugh. I thought we could poke fun at him. Chat, I get made fun of all the time. All the time.
That's true. He does get made fun of. Like, I'll see posts of Sneako on Twitter of people just clowning on him and bullying him, I guess. He gets the same treatment.
I really don't like bullies, guys. And there's this guy named Sneako making fun of me, making fun of my friend, making fun of jiu-jitsu.
Making fun of someone, making jokes is not what bullying is. I know I got the bully jacket on. That's not what that's called humor. I don't understand.
He calls himself a boxer. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy.
I don't call myself a boxer. What the fuck did he get this information from? That is the first time I heard that. But actually, you know what? To hear that from a world champion in his division, cool. But I'm not a boxer. I have zero pro fights, zero amateur fights. I train sometimes.
So he's right about that. I mean, are we going to then, like, whenever you see a comedy special, if someone makes fun of an athlete, are they going to then challenge the comedian to whatever the athlete's sport is? Like, you know, if I'm making fun of somebody who looks ridiculous on a basketball court, if I'm like, wow, that person looks really awful on the basketball court for being a basketball player, and then they see me making fun of them for being not a good basketball player, it would then make sense for them to be like, I challenge you to a basketball game, winner, whatever the stakes are. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not a basketball athlete. I'm just making fun of the way you play because it looked funny. So like, am I not allowed to make fun of things just because I'm not participating in said thing? If that really was the beef, that's a weird... Yeah, that's not bullying. Okay, so from what I'm gathering here, Sneako said that Mikey Musumeci looks like Mark Zuckerberg, and he probably said it in a sarcastic or joking or whatever kind of manner that Mikey Musumeci then saw, and so he took that as bullying. See, this is why I wish I knew where the video was where Sneako is making fun of Mikey Musumeci looking like Mark Zuckerberg. That's not really bullying. That really is you just clowning on somebody. Clowning on someone is not bullying. If it's something where it's every day, Sneako is saying something to Mikey Musumeci and he's just ridiculing him every single day and it's been happening for like a year or even 6 months or something like that. Yeah, okay, I could see that as being bullying. But for him to just kind of single him out one time and be like, this guy looks like Mark Zuckerberg and he trains with Mark Zuckerberg. He's like a little mini-me Mark Zuckerberg. Mikey Zuckerberg, Mikey Musumeci Berg or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, so that isn't bullying. That's just, you're clowning on this guy. So anyways, here's the response.
Obviously, Sneako doesn't want to fight me, adding in all these stupid stipulations he knows will never happen. Typical bully. They talk and they talk, beyond the safety of their screen, or even in the bathroom, recklessly, and they never face consequences. There's so many people out there like him.
One condition. I'm not getting paid. You're a world champion, and this was my first time ever training. I want to speak to Mark Zuckerberg for an hour about him. Bring that part up. Don't say that's a bunch of stipulations. You spar with him. You speak to him regularly. Let me have a conversation with him. I'm going to live stream it. That's it. It's not all these stipulations. I'm not asking for weight things. I'm not asking for any clauses. I'm just saying I want to speak to your sparring partner, Mark Zuckerberg, live on a stream, and then I'll do MMA with you. Don't try to lie. You're going to call me a bully. This is fair.
Okay, so apparently there, it seems like Mikey was saying that Sneako is trying to duck him in the fight by asking for such a ridiculous request, which I would say, I would actually kind of agree with Mikey on this one. That is kind of a ridiculous request to ask, to be like, I accept your fight, but you have to let me talk to your sparring partner, Mark Zuckerberg. It's like... Okay, it's Mark Zuckerberg. That's a very difficult person to get away from, to get him away from his meta business. Now, as much as I hate Mark Zuckerberg, I also want to say that I think Sneako's topic that he wants to talk to Zuckerberg about is kind of stupid. Asking about Israel. Can I even say that? Can I say that? I don't know if that's allowed on YouTube. But I do think it is I think it's a topic that would go nowhere, because I don't think Sneako would be prepared to have very intricate questions to ask Mark Zuckerberg about. I would ask about censorship on the Meta platforms. I would ask about election meddling. Can I say that? I don't even know. I would talk about, I don't know if I can even say that, meddling in a specific event that Americans participate during November every 4 years. I feel like that's the safest way I can put that without getting banned on YouTube. Like even Elon Musk right here, this guy, Judd Legum. Elon Musk has spent this week spreading false and misleading information about voting to his 168 million followers. Musk used these erroneous claims to justify massive restrictions on voting, including ending early voting and most mail-in voting. Follow along for details. Which someone else responded, Elon, properly run social networks do their best to take down misinformation about elections. Elon Musk then enters the chat. Funny you should mention properly run social networks. Are you aware that Mark Zuckerberg, presumably a proper runner of social networks, funded illegal voting vans in the last election? And he cites it with this article from Fox 59. This guy, though, that initially kind of called him out, Yan LeCun, a professor at NYU, Chief AI scientist at Meta. So this guy works for Mark Zuckerberg and is trying to tell Elon Musk that he is the one running. He's basically trying to tell him, like, there's a right way to run a social media network, and he happens to work for the opposing social media network. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Anyways, guys, to kind of wrap this up, so I think it is kind of cool too to see Sneako getting a bit more active into martial arts. There was also a clip, I'll insert it here, of Sneako training with Jake Shields, learning a rear naked choke on Chris Curtis. So I was like, wow, that's a very random crossover of people I did not expect to see: Jake Shields, Sneako, and Chris Curtis. But it's cool that Sneako's trying to learn some grappling, because he doesn't have, it seems like he was making fun of the sport, and he made fun of Mikey Musumeci looking like Mark Zuckerberg, which is not bullying. That's just like a joke, okay? I make fun of people all the time, like, hey, you look like, XYZ, with like friends or whatever. Or just people online, even on Twitter. When I go ham on people, I just like to clown on people. When we make memes, if I made a meme of Mikey Musumeci looking like Mark Zuckerberg, would that then make me a bully? Are memes, if you make a meme, does that make you a bully? Because that's essentially what Mikey Musumeci is saying. He's saying that to be a comedian is to be a bully. Now, Sneako's no comedian, but the intent is the same. And also, I want to end this with a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast when he had Rob Zombie on. Rob Zombie, who is an artist that I've listened to since I was a teenager, probably even before I was a teenager, is someone who is not pro-bully, but he understands that with bullies comes as adversity and motivation. So without bullies, we would not have Rob Zombie. And do we really want a world where there was no Rob Zombie? Anyways, guys, catch you in the next episode.
That one day I realized, this is how I realized it one day. Like in high school, I didn't associate with anyone. Like, no one remembers me because I was just invisible. But me and my friends were sort of like into punk rock, like in a place where like no one knew what that was. That was just like... And then the day we graduated, we were at like hanging out around McDonald's, and the main asshole jock kid came up who would be your worst enemy. And he started like, hey man, I'm going to college. Where do you guys get like your cool clothes and stuff? Like, wait a minute. It was 4 years of torture from you and your douchebag friends, and now the day we graduate, you're like, hey, you guys were... So that's what I do. Everyone's so fucking insecure. It doesn't matter. And then the next day I was like, I don't care anymore.
Oh, that's crazy.
I'm a different person.
Yeah, it's hard to forgive those people. The people that fucked with you in high school, it's hard to let that go and realize, they just were probably tortured at home.
Well, you can't let it go because that's your motivation. I'm always motivated by anger and revenge and things of that nature. That's why when people want anti-bullying, I go, well, might be anti-success later on in life. Because, people that get fucked with tend to make it.
Yeah, Chris Rock has a bit about that.
Yeah, it's true.
It's certainly true for fighters. Almost all the best fighters in the UFC have some story where someone was fucking with them when they were young and they had to figure out how to fight.
Yep. What's the first thing we all do? Take karate lessons.
Yeah. Well, even Chris Rock's bit involves Steve Jobs and a lot of other people. Like, do you not want Microsoft? Like,
yeah, no, it's super true.
Yeah, there's sometimes people can be too talented where things come too easy.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. There's a thing like, what you were talking about earlier about being bullied. like maybe if we get rid of bullying, we're going to get rid of a certain amount of success too. I mean, it's not like I don't want anybody to hurt their feelings, but I understand that there's something that comes out of that, right? Well, there's something that comes out of it being really hard for you to do. Like when you figure out how to do it, you've developed this indomitable spirit because you've managed to make your way through the hardest levels of the game to get to the top. It's not like you were just faster than everybody.
Yeah.
You have bigger muscles and your fucking head's thicker or something.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be like pro-bullying because that's weird. But, but there is something to it because like real life just bullies you anyway.
There's something to adversity.
Like you have to be able to like when people, like whenever someone says like, what's your advice for like, you know, doing this, like being in show business or something, I go, if being told by complete strangers that you suck all day long does not bother you in any way, you know, then maybe it's the business for you. You know?
But maybe it's not because I think it bothers everybody who wants to do well.
But there's a difference between bothering like, that's a drag, or like, I quit. You know?
Right.
Because there's always, this is funny, whenever someone comes to me and they say like, hey, I wrote this short story. Be brutally honest. I mean, brutally honest. That person's like secretly saying, please say something nice about this.
Of course. Yeah.
Come watch my show and be brutally honest. Brutally honest, you're hideous to look at and you're the least talented person I've ever seen in my life.
That's such a request. Like I've had people ask me to read their scripts. I'm like, hey, bro, you're asking me for an hour and a half of my time.
Yeah.
I don't even know you. Do you know how valuable an hour and a half is? I have children and 3 jobs and a lot of hobbies. I don't have an hour and a half to watch a movie.
I don't even want to read a script when my agent sends it over. I don't want to read yours. I mean,
they
it's
think
a lot of time suck.
If I can just get this Rob Zombie, he can make it. Then it'll all work out.
It's so fun. The people that always make it never talk about themselves.